أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جاعل في الأرض خليفة قالوا وتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون. Chapter 2 verse 31. And when your Lord said to the angels, I am about to place a vicegerent in the earth, they said, will you place therein such as will cause disorder in it and shed blood? And we glorify you with your praise and extol your holiness. He answered, I know what you know not. In commentary, there are several misconceptions that have been removed. Hazrat Maulana Rizwan explained that the garden which is described that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was placed in was not the Jannat or the heaven of the hereafter, because the heaven of the hereafter is given many characteristics that cannot possibly be that same garden that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was in, one of which the Holy Quran mentions is that none can be expelled from it. That the Quran says that no one will be mukhrijeen from it, no one will be caused to leave it. And what we see is that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and his people were compelled to leave that garden that they were in. So this is the first clear indication that the garden that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was in was not the paradise of the hereafter. Then also we see that in the garden of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, Satan was there. It was a garden of this world, and Satan was there with his temptation. The Holy Quran describes it in the garden of the hereafter. There will be no vain talk, no falsehood, nothing of that sort. So Satan has no place in the garden of the paradise of the hereafter. So this is another clear indication that the garden that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was in was the physical garden of this world, not the garden of the hereafter where a person receives spiritual blessings as a result of the actions that they did. Then also another point that Hazrat Maulana Rizwan explained is that according to the Holy Quran, Hazrat Adam was not the first human being. He was not the first man. Rather, the Holy Quran describes that Allah Almighty created us as human beings, as a species, and then He perfected us. And then He raised Adam among us, or from within us. And this raising of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam is a part of our reaching a perfection as human beings. It is not the starting point of our species, but it is the culmination of our basic spiritual maturity as an entire species, as a people. At least a basic level of spiritual maturity by which we could understand religion. So the coming of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was not as the first Homo sapien, not as the first human being, but it was as the first insan in the metaphorical sense of the word, because insan as a meaning, as a word, has the meaning of one who has two loves, and the implication there is a love for his creation, and the love for the Creator, and a love for the creation of God. So this is what makes us as a fully evolved Homo sapien unique from the animal kingdom. Everyone else in the animal kingdom just has one love, which is a love for their fellow creation, whether it is their children, whether it is their tribe or their family or whatever it is. But they're incapable of comprehending a love for their own Creator. The fact that they exist, a consciousness, where they came from, these points of reflection are things that cannot exist in animals that are a lower form of life. In fact, to an extent, they can't even exist among children until they reach a certain developmental milestone in their maturity, in their intellectual maturity. So Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was the first insan in that sense of the word. That when Homo sapiens had reached a level of maturity where we had evolved above only being capable of one love, and we had risen above the animal kingdom, then when we became capable of those two loves and of recognizing and loving our Creator, then from among those people, wherever those people existed in the world, whenever a tribe reached that level of evolution and maturity, a prophet would be raised among them who is referred to in the Holy Quran as Adam. And that Adam is a symbolic name for the first prophet that was sent to all those different tribes as one by one they gradually reached that level of maturity. So Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was the first prophet that was sent to mankind when mankind reached the level of insaniyat, of humanity, in the sense of what religion has described. And also Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salatu wasalam is described that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was not the only Adam. There were many other Adams, and Hazrat Huzur alayhi salam has referred to a vision of Hazrat Ibn Arabi, and also from the indications of other writings of Sufiya, and Hazrat Masih Maud alayhi salam himself has confirmed it with his own verdict on the subject, that there were many Adams that were sent throughout the world. and they were sent over tens of thousands of years. It was not just that it happened once. So Adam is a symbolic name. It does not necessarily refer to one person. If it is to refer to one person, then the Holy Quran can be taken to refer to the Adam who led up to the Holy Prophet ﷺ. Because although there were tens of thousands or even 100,000 Adams sent throughout the world, but the one who was to reach, whose dispensation was to reach the highest level of Khatamun Nabiyyin, that Adam has a special distinction. So if one of those Adams was ever singled out and needed to be mentioned, then it would be that Adam. But otherwise, there were many Adams that were sent otherwise. No, the way of nature is that it puts out in abundance, as we've gone over before, looking for that quality and looking for the one. So the beginning of every dispensation is in abundance, but those who reach the highest levels, they are in far greater rarity. There were tens of thousands, perhaps even 100,000 Adams that were sent, but not all of them, all of their dispensations reached the level of height that they could then be sent to Noah. Perhaps many of them, or maybe even most of them, then withered out after that. But then only a select number of them reached a height where then they could reach the level where a prophet like Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam was sent to them. And then after that, they could reach a level of maturity where another prophet like Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam was sent to them to add and to take them to a higher level of Sharia. And then as it goes higher and higher, there is only one Khatamun Nabiyyin who could come, because that is a rarity, that is the quality of it, and that quality needs a huge amount of quantity from which it can derive itself from. So the Adams were many. And in fact, at one point in his Tarjumatul Quran class, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Rabi rahimahullah ta'ala indicated towards the fact that perhaps Noah, as mentioned in the Holy Quran, is also an indication towards a category, not the name of a specific prophet. Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, we know for certain, is an indication towards a category of prophets who were sent in multitude. But also Huzur explained that we find in the religious traditions of many, many people across the world that there is an ancient tradition that many different peoples were punished with a flood in their past. Now the Holy Quran does not endorse this view that the entire world flooded. It only describes the people of Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam being flooded in their locality because of a punishment upon their tribe. But it is also possible that Allah Ta'ala sent this flood as an exemplary punishment for all those various people who had evolved past the level of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and reached the level of Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam. And when that Noah was sent to them, whether it was in China or in Mexico or in Australia or any part of the world, and then they rejected that individual, then many of those tribes or those peoples may have been punished and destroyed by means of a flood. And then a group may have risen from among them who then was able to advance, or at least seek to advance to the next level of spirituality. Whether they made it to the next level of spiritual evolution or not, Allah knows best. So this is also another aspect of tafsir of the Holy Quran, that Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam may also be an indication towards this. So these are a few points that are described as an introduction to the story of Hazrat Adam alayhi salam and how it refers to the history of religion in the world, and how that history of religion is related to our evolution as a species. The two go hand in hand. In the same way that it took hundreds of thousands of years for us to physically evolve to the point that we are at today, it also took tens of thousands of years for us to spiritually evolve to the point that we are today. And in the same way that there was a natural selection, a survival of the fittest in the physical realm, so also there was a natural selection and a survival of the fittest in the spiritual realm, by which an abundance of spiritual life was put out into this world. And a huge amount of quantity was put out in search for that quality. And this can give us an appreciation for the specialty and the beauty of living in an age where we are able to be a part of the ummah of the Khatamun Nabiyyin, the very pristine of all the prophets, and to be the recipients of his message, the Holy Quran and his Sunnah, and to have the opportunity to follow it. So this is the opportunity for which humanity was created, and this is the opportunity for which human beings have waited tens of thousands of years to be able to see and to be able to witness with their own eyes. And so when we see Islam from that perspective, then it can give us an appreciation of the great beauty and the treasure that has landed in our laps through the Rahmaniyat of Allah Ta'ala without our having ever asked for it or deserved it. So with this understanding, may Allah Almighty enable us to appreciate the blessings of Islam and to be able to act on them in our lives and to benefit from them. So now if there's any questions or anyone has in their minds, then we can briefly address them.
Islam said about himself, मैं कभी आदम, कभी मूसा, कभी याकूब, नीज इब्राहिम हूँ, नस्ल है मेरी बेशुमार. He declared himself as Adam also.
Ji. Yes.
I have a question. I've actually got two questions. First question is, the Quran also said that God created man and jinn for the worship of God. So explain the concept of jinn from our and the Muslim perspective. The other thing is, and just to kind of segue, I was reading an article on the BBC website that talked about that as human beings, we have more microbes, in our bodies than human cells. They're estimated 43%. So therefore, in reality, we're 43% human. And it's considered another genome. And I was kind of like, thinking that, in the context of jinn, is that what another definition of jinn is?
Okay. So the point on the microbes, that I'm not familiar with. I'd have to look into it to understand it in the first place. But on وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ, there can be a couple of meanings of it. Jinn, for example, firstly, can refer to human beings, as is described clearly in the Holy Quran in Surah Jinn, where Allah Almighty describes a group that is rijalu min al jinn, men from among the jinn. And rijal is a word that is only used for human beings. So this is a verse that clearly gives us the conclusion that jinn, while it can refer to many things, it definitely can refer to human beings as well. So one meaning is that it refers to a class of human beings, a special addressees in this subject of those who worship Allah Almighty. That there is general, those who are insan, and then there are those who are jinn, who are those who are the special recipients and beneficiaries of the teachings of Islam from among the human beings. So it may be an indication towards that since there is such a huge difference between a human being who rises to the heights of humanity and a person who only stays at the bare minimum or the ordinary levels. So there was a need in this verse when it spoke about ibadat, that you should strive to be from among the first addressees of ibadat, of the commandment of ibadat, which is the jinn. Don't just be an ordinary insan, but be among the jinn, those who are hidden from the sight of the world, but have exceptional capacities in the sight of Allah Almighty. And the other meaning could be that there is, because jinn is presented as something that is next to insan, it is not necessarily presented as being something as a category within insan, because the word is used وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ, the jinn and the men. So it may be taken as a species that is separate from human beings, if it is taken in the literal world of insan, meaning human being. So here it can refer to the other forms of spiritual life that Allah Almighty has created for the sake of His worship. And it is to remind us that we as human beings are not the end all and be all of Allah Ta'ala's creation. Allah Ta'ala is far more vast than we are. And we would be anthropomorphizing God Almighty if we were to just say that we are His only creation, or to even imagine it. That would give people a legitimate objection against Islam or against theists, saying that we just made up that humans beings existed and then they created God. So Allah Ta'ala reminds us that Allah Ta'ala's creation is vast and we are just one piece of it. And Allah Ta'ala has created all those hidden forms of life that are as or even more advanced than us, that are outside of our understanding, which are the jinn, which may be spiritual beings or other beings in the other parts of the universe, for His worship. They're intelligent beings, and they may be more intelligent than us. They may be spiritual beings. And so it may be a reminder to us that Allah Ta'ala has created all of this, everything, including us as human beings, for the sake of His worship. These could be a couple of things that this verse of the Holy Quran has taught us.
You're saying that Jesus gave a blood for the sins of previous prophets and previous nations of their sins. And for example, Adam and Eve, it was a sin, and then later on Hazrat Ibrahim, and then Hazrat Noah. Why you cannot tell this thing to the young kids?
The Christian concept of atonement?
Yes.
Well, the Christian concept of atonement is something that, it's something that's fundamentally illogical. The Hazrat Masih Maud Islam also explained that if you have a headache and then someone else hits himself over the head with a brick, it's not going to fix either your headache or his. In fact, it's going to make his own headache worse. So to say that one person sinned and another person was crucified for it, it doesn't carry any logic, nor does it carry any religious precedence. The Bible itself rejects this idea, as does the basic principles of justice that the Quran has taught. It is only the interpretations of Paul on the Gospels that give support to this idea. So the burden of proof is on those who put forward an idea that goes against logic and religious tradition. So there is no need to actually convince anyone of it, except for Christians themselves. Otherwise, as a default, we all believe in principles of common sense and justice. And then it is as opposed to those concepts that people then begin to believe on faith, these Christian concepts that something like atonement can exist. And again, this thing is based on the idea that not only did Hazrat Adam alayhi salam sin, which the Holy Quran rejects anyways. The Holy Quran clarifies that he did not sin, he simply made a mistake, a genuine mistake of a misunderstanding, and Allah Ta'ala forgave him for that mistake. But not only is it based on the assumption that he sinned, but also on the assumption that that sin can carry forward into future generations. And this also is another point of illogic, because the Bible itself has given the symptoms of that sin, physical symptoms. One is that women will give birth by hard labor, by difficult, painful labor, and that men will have to toil for earning their livelihood. Both of these are things that have never been removed as a result of a person accepting the blood sacrifice of Jesus to wash away the remnants of that sin. So there's enough reasons to reject this on a scriptural and a logical level, but I think that suffices. But I think the main point to make is that the burden of proof is on those who put forward these ideas, not on those who reject them on the basis of general common sense. Okay, so we can end here and then do Salatul Isha, and then next time we can continue. So we can do it next time. I don't want it to become too long.